Hey there troops, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and this video is sponsored by EA. Today we're taking a deep dive and look at how to find and unlock objectives and supply drops in order to get the best loot in Firestorm to give you the best chances of winning. If you happen to be a veteran of the Battlefield franchise, some of these objectives may feel very similar, but they do have some new twists. But for all players, it's vital to know the objectives available in Firestorm and more specifically, how they'll be beneficial for you. To begin with, we have strong boxes. Now these are the orange boxes marked Solace available and found on the map. These orange crates that you see dotted around are more likely to have higher tier loot in them than stuff you'd commonly find on the floor. They're found mostly at named locations and points of interest. So for example, if you were to head to the dig site, you'd find multiple of these boxes. Likewise, if you were to head to any other landmark on the map, you'd likely find multiple boxes in these areas. It's risk and reward. You simply have to open the box by hitting the open button on your given platform, but there isn't any real task involved. The only difficulty here is that these are rare boxes that are only typically found on the landmarks where most players will land. So the reward here is much higher tier loot, but the risk being that you're going to have to land in locations where there are typically a high concentration of players. So you'll see lots of parachutes in the area, and it's down to you to make a judgment call as to whether or not you want more strong boxes when you first land. Next up are safes. Safes are very similar to strong boxes in the sense that they are a risk-reward prospect, and also typically only found in named locations. Safes house an even higher chance of getting even better loot in Battlefield V Firestorm, but the problem with these is that they require time to open. Holding the open button will put you into an animation of cracking the safe, and you can only look around on a swivel around about a 180-degree radius. So looking around simply isn't enough. If you're playing in squads, it's highly recommended that you get somebody to look after you whilst you're busting the safe, but if you're playing solos, you're really going to have to listen out to potential enemies nearby who may decide to rush you as you're opening the safe. Now of course the risk here is that you will get caught and you will get taken out whilst taking the safe yourself, but the rewards here are huge. So if you can secure a location where you've found a safe and you're adamant that nobody is nearby, this is definitely a risk worth taking. Next up are supply drops, and supply drops in Firestorm can be found in two ways. The first one is a supply drop that's available from passing planes. Passing planes will drop supply drops sequentially throughout the game, and you'll see them come down in parachutes in small canisters. Now this shouldn't be mistaken with vehicle supply drops, which drop vehicles, so make sure you actually look up at the parachute to ensure it is a supply drop itself. Now, supply drops are marked with green smoke, and this smoke is visually available to everybody in the game, so when a supply drop comes down, if the parachute didn't already make it obvious enough, the smoke will, and the smoke will dissipate when you have finally opened the crate yourself, or if an enemy happens to get their hands on it before you. Now there's lots of extra loot, typically what you would find in the likes of a strong box or a safe within a supply drop, such as weapons, gadgets, armor, backpacks and everything in between, and it's likely that you'll find some tier 3 loot in these supply drops that drop off from the planes. Now these supply drops that come from planes have a huge risk, being that everybody in the map can see where they've landed, and if they're nearby they'll be able to see the green smoke with it. It's also a huge reward though with those tier 3 items. Now the next way to get a supply drop is actually through a flare gun that you can pick up yourself. Now if you've opened a strong box, a safe or some other way of gathering loot before, you may have been lucky enough to come across a actual supply drop flare gun. Now with this, it's a much safer and risk-free way of calling in your supply drop. You'll be able to fire it anywhere on the ground and the supply crate will land at that given location. Enemies nearby will still be able to see where this supply drop is coming in and see the green smoke, but it does give you the opportunity to get set up and make sure you have a secure location before you call this in. So the risk here is significantly lessened, but there is of course the maximum level of loot in tier 3 loot that is available to you. Next up are supply points, and these are the traditional style capture objectives you'd see in a game like Conquest. These appear randomly on the map as the game goes on, and you'll be able to notice them not only on the minimap itself, but also with a giant air balloon that slowly lifts from the objective. Now, there is a big risk in this, because once you start capturing this point, everybody knows you're there, and typically these points are out in the open, don't have a lot of cover, and require the entire squad to be vigilant to make sure nobody attacks whilst you're capturing the objective. Once you're in the proximity, the flag will steadily start ticking over. You'll see that you'll steadily be capturing it, but everybody else on the map can see that too. And that means that you're likely going to have some poachers coming in to collect the loot. Now there is lots of loot available. There are 2 supply canisters like you would see from supply drops on the ground that activate the second you have fully captured the flag. But be aware that the most cunning of players will likely wait for you to capture the flag before executing any kind of ambush. To minimize the risk on this kind of objective, you're going to want something like a heavy vehicle, like a tank, present in order to effectively capture this, or you're going to want to make sure that the rest of your squad mates are set up in good locations to provide you with cover. For an added layer of benefit, make sure you have smoke grenades equipped in order to quickly get out of any sticky situations. Finally, there's vehicle breakouts. Now these are dotted around the map and you may notice them because they have a bunker shape, but they aren't always inherently apparent on the minimap itself. Now, in order to unlock a vehicle breakout, you need to turn the 2 wheels on either side of the vault doors. This is time consuming and it sets off an alarm. In a vehicle breakout, you will find some kind of heavy or offensive vehicle that will have some kind of weaponry on it, be it a cannon or a light infantry cannon. Now, inside this, there's also options for things like fuel. You may as well find a strongbox too, and you will also find things like ammunition to load the tank. Now, these aren't always guaranteed, but make sure you have a sweep round inside these bunkers before you jump in the vehicle. Naturally, as you start busting open this place, you're going to hear massive sirens. These sirens are audible across the entire map, and expect people to rally to them like they would to a supply point. Now the only bonus here is that this is an audible cue and not a visual one, so people will actually have to actively search for your vehicle breakout in order to find your squad. Now, there is a big risk involved here, and honestly, the best way to do this is much like you'd approach a supply point. You want 2 people operating those wheels to get the vehicle out and open, but you also want 2 people providing some overwatch and providing security for your squad mates should anybody want to poach what you have. So that's about it for finding the best loot in Battlefield V Firestorm. Now, feel free to branch out to some of the lesser named locations. They tend to have less players and they'll give you more time to accumulate loot steadily. But if you're a player who's looking to get the best loot fast in order to be very effective on the field, drop on the named locations, supply drops, supply points, vehicle breakouts and strong boxes. They will be your best friends as well as safes. So troops, that's about it from me today. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in the next video.